Okay, let's go to market segmentation. The idea here is to divide a market into small segments, which have whether distinct needs, characteristics, or behavior that may require separate marketing strategies or mixes of marketing. And the economics behind segmentation are here. Okay, if there is no segmentation, then we have here the relationship between the demand and the price. So as higher is the price, lower is the demand we have here. So the company has to decide to launch to the market a product at a given price, for example, this one, that will give as a result this level of demand. So the area of this rectangle here will be the sales or the revenues of the company as the product of the price and the demand. And we can say that the company is like losing all this value of these two triangles here, okay? If the market launches two products instead of one, a product at a low price that will get this demand, the area of the blue rectangle, and another product at a higher price that will get this demand of the green rectangle, take into account that this part of the demand will be, of course, consumers who will buy the lower price product. The company might gain this additional, this like light blue and the light red, sorry, the light green revenues. And even though the company is going to lose this area here, at the end, the revenues will be higher segmenting the market than non-segmenting the market. So any kind of market can be segmented, whether consumer, business, international markets. So we are going to see now the typical variables for segmenting consumer markets. We usually use geographic, demographic, psychographic, or behavioral variables to segment consumer markets. Okay? So in the case of geographic segmentation, I mean, this is interesting when the preferences of the consumers change with the geographic location. That not always happens. So the idea is to divide the market into different geographical units, such as nations, regions, states, counties, cities, even neighborhoods. Or, for example, by the size of the metropolitan area or the population density or climate. So all related to geography. We have here an example. So the Zara, for example, has different price levels for different countries, being the least expensive Spain. So this is a clear example of how Zara prices geographically. Demographic segmentation divides the market into groups based on demographic variables such as age, gender, family size, or others, as you can see here. That happens for many products, that the preferences of consumers vary by demographic variables, so it makes sense in those cases. We have here an example of a company selling guitars only for girls, for women. So this is a clear example of a company using the gender variable to segment the market and to target the women segment. Or this example of Procter & Gamble, that is targeting here women over their 50s with this site. Psychographic segmentation divides buyers into different groups based on variables such as social class, lifestyle, or personality traits. This might be a very effective segmentation, and many brands use these variables to segment the market. For example, I don't know, I'm sure you know some or many of these brands, okay? But probably you didn't know that all these brands belong to the same company, which is VVC. BVC. BVC or BV Corporation is a company that sells apparel, footwear, and accessories, and has different brands targeting different, let's say, groups of consumers based on psychographics. For example, the North Face, defines exploration by revolutionizing athlete-inspired outdoor performance apparel, footwear, and equipment for the fast social explorer. Okay, so that would be like lifestyle. The same for Timberland, or even for another brand of the same company, Napa PG. Behavioral segmentation divides buyers into groups based on their knowledge, attitudes, uses, or responses to a product. For example, based on occasion in which the product is purchased, the benefits sought, the user status, the usage rate, or the loyalty status. This is a very effective segmentation if it can be applied. Sometimes it's not easy to apply because companies have not enough information about each of the customers to do this kind of segmentation. This is an example of benefits, in this case Diet Coke, and the main benefit is that it has not sugar, so it doesn't contributes to the weight gain. Or for different purchase occasion, for example, you may buy chocolates for regular use in the supermarket, a regular brand, but for special occasions like Christmas or some Valentine's Day, you may purchase these specific chocolates. Any market could be segmented with using these variables, the user status, usage rate, and loyalty status. But for this, you need to identify your customers and to know in which of these stages the customer is. So any market is formed by unaware and aware consumers of the brand. Okay. Among the aware consumers, some of them have not tried the product, and others have already tried the product. Among the non-tried, some of them will have a negative opinion, others may have a neutral opinion, and others might have even a favorable opinion. And among those who tried, some of them will be rejectors, in the sense that they will never repeat again. Others have not yet repeated, and others are repeating. Among those repeating, some might be loyal to other brands in the market. Others might be thinking on switching to other brands, and some of them might be loyal to our brand. Okay? And among the loyal, some of them may be light users, in the sense that they buy the product or use the product with a low frequency or at a low rate. Others regular users, and others heavy users. And for each of these different groups of consumers, different marketing actions should be taken. For example, if you want to convert unaware into aware consumers, you might use communication. Okay? For those consumers who never tried the product, you might use sampling, give like free samples. And for like users, you might try to do something like increase consumption, like giving specific discounts, if buying more units or whatever. So the major segmentation variables in consumer markets are usually these, and the different segments on each of these variables, in this case for the United States, and also this. Okay, sometimes companies use multiple segmentation variables at the same time to identify smaller and better defined target groups. Like in this case, for example, okay, in the snack food market, the segments that might be 6 are defined in terms of different variables, like lifestyle characteristics, the benefits sought by consumers, the consumption level, the types of snacks eaten, and also demographics. Okay. And then we have here by columns the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 segments, each of one with a percentage that they represent out of the total market. Okay, and in this case, the main variable here will be the benefits out, probably. Okay, some of consumers look for nutritious, non-artificial, natural snacks, where others really want, good tasting, or snacks that satisfy hunger, without considering other potential benefits. Okay, but in order to identify consumers seeking for these benefits, companies might use this kind of what we call descriptor variables that are easier to identify. Okay, because the benefits out are difficult to identify in a consumer unless we ask the consumer specifically about this. But for example, demographics is easier to identify, or even lifestyle characteristics. And okay, for each of these variables, different marketing mix variables also might be used. Okay, when companies want to segment international markets, they sometimes, of course, use the country or the regions. That would be like a geographical segmentation, or groups of countries like the BRIC, Brazil, Russia, India, and China. But other times, companies segment international markets by the needs and buyer behavior across different countries, and this is called intermarket segmentation. Okay, so there can be a segment of consumers belonging to two different countries, because these consumers are quite similar, even though they belong to two different countries. For example, in TV, targets teenagers all around the world with the same TV shows. When segmenting business markets, companies use, different variables. Demographic variables in this case would be the size of the customer, the industry, or the activity of the customer, and also these additional variables. Typically, like the customer operating characteristics, the purchasing approaches, or situational factors, or even personal characteristics of the employees in the buying center. So this would be the typical segmentation variables for business markets. You have them here. And here we have an example of a company selling aluminum. Segments the market in a sequential way, okay? Like step by step. For example, it starts by the final use of the product, and then it has customers that use the aluminum for making automobile components, others for house construction, and others for drinks packs. And then it can go into a more granular segmentation. For example, among customers using aluminum for house construction, some of them use this aluminum for semi-finished products, other for construction elements, and other for, let's say, for example, aluminum mobile houses. And the same, we can go further into a more granular segmentation, and we can divide, for example, those customers who use the aluminum for construction elements might be of different sizes, like big, medium, or small. Okay, and even going further, taking into account the purchase quality. So at the end, there may be like many different segments, each of them requiring a different combination of marketing. Okay, I leave this for you to study by yourself. Of course, for a segmentation to be effective, it has to let's say, accomplish some requirements like these ones. Okay, so for example, just to give one example, the segments should be accessible, because if they cannot be reached or they cannot be served, it doesn't make any sense that we define those segments. Okay, so I leave this exercise for you. I would like you to think of variables to segment the pen market. So this will be like an exercise for yourselves. Okay? You have here more examples on segmentation, but I'm going to leave this for you. This is a segmentation scheme, the prism, like a very granular or detailed segmentation used in countries like the US, in which they define like different segments of consumers, and also they specify at different counties in that will be something like zip codes even, what is the composition of each of the zip codes in the US of these groups defined before. Okay, and then, for example, when a new store is going to open or a new company, retailer, for example, is going to open a new store, and they want to target a specific group of customers, they can know which specific district or zip code would be the best for the location of this store. And you can take a look to this website. There is something similar in Spain. There is a company called Accessor Expert that does something quite similar. Okay, it's mainly for retailers when they want to open a new location. And you have here another potential activity. You may work in pairs with a classmate. So assume that you work at a regional state university whose traditional target market is higher school students within the region, and assume that this group of students is shrinking, is projected to decrease over the next 10 years. So I would like you to recommend other potential market segments, and you might leave your answers here in the book lab. And we are going to stop by now.